And you're also the chaplain for NHRA.
I was a chaplain for a few years, but for the most part, I just go as Mike Booker, Jim Booker's son. And there's a lot of guys get my Bible study CDs: Antron Brown, Tony Schumacher, Larry Dixon, Matt Hagan, Leah Pritchett. You know, there's different drivers that I've ministered to, just giving them the word. And
so we have lots of musicians that are in the music world, and you know, Sonny from POD, and the Lord's called him in there, and the Lord obviously has you in this whole, you know, industry. Was there a time where you wanted to be a race car driver, and then you had to, you know, give it up, and how did that whole process
work? I got saved, and I thought, okay, I'll be a Christian drag racer. And there came a point in 1988 where I knew God was telling me to let it go, that was not going to be my life. My dad, the day before he died, he told my mom, don't let Mike race. And the Bible says in Proverbs, honor your father and mother, it'll be an ornament of grace around your neck. And I knew God was telling me to let it go, which I did. And so I was focused on ministry. Then there came a point where he wanted me to be in it, not to race, but to be a witness. And I did that for a good 15, 20 years. And through that, some of my racing friends put this whole thing together where I could drive. And I'm still a pastor, I'm not going to be a drag racer. But if I can race 1 or 2 races a year and use it for ministry, and I can't afford to race. These cars are $1,000 a run, $10,000 an event for what I drive. And there's a couple sponsors that have helped me. But my goal is not drag racing. My goal is to share the gospel. He's just given me the chance to do it in that setting. If I was a tennis player, we'd be talking about tennis. If I was a golfer, which I hate golf, I would be talking about golf. You know, if I was a fisherman, you know, it doesn't matter where you're at. Whatever setting you're in, that thing in itself is nothing unless it's used for the Lord.
This seems to be a consistent thing that at least I've been observing in people's testimonies when there's something that could be used as a tool, that there's this process of, you know, falling in love with it, idolizing it, and then giving it up, and then getting the right bearings of how I'm perceiving this whole thing, and then it kind of, the Lord is bringing it back. And then it even becomes a struggle of like, Lord, I can't take this back because I can't deal with that. So for those different stages of maybe where guys are at, you know, I mean, what would you?
Well, I know for me, I mean, God promised Abraham a son. But the very blessing he had for him, the danger was, is the blessing would become before the Lord. And so God tested Abraham, he had to lay it down, and he said, now I know you won't hold anything from me. The worst thing in the world that can happen is we put God's blessings ahead of God. And so I think God intended to use this, but first I had to put it away, and it was a test of my heart. And so I think if you're not willing to put the thing away, then he can't use you in that.
And the Lord is working within this whole world. I mean, it's like a little world.
Oh yeah,
it's a subculture. Oh, yeah. And what are some of the things that the Lord is radically doing within this culture?
Well, we don't have enough time for all the stories. I can tell you so many places where God has moved and opened doors. You know, Tony Schumacher, I've seen him do things with him, Antron Brown, Matt Hagan, where it almost always comes down to these guys saying, hey, look, put the Lord first, and then see what he does. Because the temptation is to put racing first. And I've seen God work in these guys' hearts, humble them to where they're seeking him, and then he lifts them up. Because God's going to lift up people for a testimony in every area of life. But it's always going to be people that put him first. You know, I'm sure you guys know people like Kurt Warner. You know, one time he was a stock boy. A year later, he was MVP in the Super Bowl. But he was bold about the Lord. And so if you're bold and you're not afraid to lift Jesus up, he is going to put you in places to share.
Yeah. And so I think